My fiancée shamed my job at our rehearsal dinner, so I left her at the table and took the honeymoon trip alone. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've never been ashamed of hard work. I'm an HVAC technician, the kind of job that leaves your hands calloused and your clothes smelling like metal and dust, but also the kind that pays the bills honestly. I fix what's broken. I build things with my hands, and I sleep at night knowing I earn every cent. That's the life I built for myself. Simple, steady, and real. When I met Claire, everything changed. She was 27, graceful, confident, with that kind of effortless charm that turns heads in every room. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue. I was the guy flipping burgers. She was the girl in a white sundress laughing at some story about her corporate job. We couldn't have been more different. She came from money, a family that measured worth in designer labels and job titles. But she smiled at me like she saw something they didn't. When she said she loved how grounded I was, I believed her. For 2 years, we dated. She told me she didn't care that I drove an old truck, that my work uniform wasn't photogenic, that money didn't matter as long as we had love. I wanted to believe love could really bridge that gap between worlds. I pictured a life with her. A home, maybe kids, and the kind of partnership my parents never had. But lately, small cracks started to show. It was the way she corrected how I spoke in front of her friends, the subtle winces when I talked about long work days, or how she suddenly preferred fancier restaurants she used to mock. At first I brushed it off. Wedding stress, I told myself. But deep down, something felt off. It was like she was slowly editing me out of the man she once claimed to love. And I had no idea. The real humiliation hadn't even started yet. The first time Claire joked about my job, I didn't even catch it as an insult. We were out with her friends, and one of them asked what I did for a living. I said proudly, "I work in HVAC. Keeps me busy year-round." Claire laughed lightly and added, "Yeah, he's basically a professional fixer-upper." Everyone chuckled. I laughed too because I thought it was harmless. But later that night, when I looked at her, I noticed something in her smile, like she enjoyed that little power shift more than she should have. It became a pattern. Every time we were around her friends or family, there'd be a new joke. At a dinner with her parents, her mother asked if I'd ever considered going back to school, and Claire chimed in, "He's more of a hands-on guy. Mom?" When I tried to talk about my business plans or a difficult repair job, she'd change the topic to someone's promotion or new car. I started noticing how her tone softened when she talked to people on her level, and how it hardened just slightly when she talked to me. One night, while we were picking out decorations for the wedding, I made a comment about budgeting smartly. She sighed and said, "You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore, babe. My family's got this." I froze. "What do you mean, that kind of stuff?" She smiled. "You know, money stress. You've carried that working-class mindset long enough." That was the first time her words actually stung. Not the joke, not the tone, but the meaning behind it. I started to wonder if she ever really saw me as her equal, or if I was just her project. Still, I brushed it off again. I told myself she was nervous, that rich people just spoke differently. But in the pit of my stomach, something whispered. This wasn't nervousness. It was superiority, and the closer the wedding got, the clearer that whisper became. By the time the rehearsal dinner rolled around, I had convinced myself everything was fine. Nerves, that's all it was. Every couple got snappy before a wedding, right? That's what my best man Tyler kept saying. So, when I showed up at the high-end restaurant Claire's family had rented out, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, waiters in tuxedos, I forced a smile and told myself to blend in. I wore my best suit, freshly pressed, but I could feel it. The looks. Her family and friends weren't even subtle. The men wore $1,000 watches. The women whispered behind manicured hands. I shook hands, smiled, nodded through small talk about the market and investments, words that meant nothing to me. Claire floated around the room like she was born to it, her hand brushing mine occasionally, but her warmth was gone. She barely looked at me. Dinner started, and the conversation turned to careers. Her cousin bragged about some corporate merger, and someone asked what I did. Before I could answer, Claire said, "He's an HVAC. He's great with tools." Laughter. The kind that sounds polite but cuts deep. I looked at her, trying to read if she realized how humiliating that was, but she just sipped her wine and changed the subject. When her father raised a toast to Claire and her dedicated fiancé. I swear there was a smirk hidden behind the word dedicated. Everyone clinked glasses. I sat there smiling, swallowing the ache in my throat, wishing I could just disappear. Tyler leaned over and muttered, "Man, you good?" I forced a laugh. Yeah, just tired, but I wasn't tired. I was suffocating. Everything about that night felt wrong. The fake smiles, the polite cruelty, the way Claire seemed to shine brighter the smaller I felt. And deep down, I knew. This night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Halfway through the dinner, the restaurant lights dimmed slightly as Claire's father stood up and tapped his glass. "Everyone, before dessert, our lovely bride-to-be wants to say a few words." The crowd clapped, laughing, their faces glowing in that golden restaurant light that made everything look warmer than it really was. I smiled at her from across the table, expecting something sweet, maybe a thank you speech, something about love or gratitude. Instead, she started with a grin that made my stomach tighten. "I just want to thank everyone for being here, and for supporting me and my fiancé, even though he's not exactly the corporate type." Laughter. Real laughter this time, she went on. "I mean, he might not know how to crunch numbers or run a business, but if the AC breaks during the ceremony, we're covered." More laughter. People clapped. Her friends nearly doubled over. I froze. My fork stopped mid-air. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She didn't stop there. "Hey, at least I'll always have someone to fix things around the house. Who needs a lawyer when you have a live-in handyman, right?" My chest tightened. The laughter grew louder, echoing, distorted. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a performance. Every word chipped away at the respect I thought she had for me. I looked around the room. Some guests laughed uncomfortably, others avoided eye contact. Tyler shook his head slowly. When she sat down, she leaned toward me, still smiling. "Don't be mad, babe. I was just breaking the tension." I whispered, "You think humiliating me in front of your family is funny?" Her smile faltered. "You're being dramatic," she muttered, and that was it. The sound of clinking glasses faded, the laughter dulled, and all I could hear was the quiet, sharp crack of something inside me breaking. I looked at her, the woman I was supposed to marry, and for the first time, I didn't recognize her at all. I sat there, staring at my half-eaten plate while laughter from the next table still echoed faintly. My palms were damp, my throat dry, and I couldn't taste a thing. The air felt heavy, suffocating, like every eye in that room was still on me, waiting for me to play along. Claire leaned over and whispered, "Smile, babe. Don't make this awkward." That was the moment I realized something irreversible. She didn't see what she did as cruel. She saw it as normal. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor loud enough to silence a few conversations. "Where are you going?" She whispered sharply. I looked at her, the perfect makeup, the polite smile masking embarrassment, and said quietly, "For air." Her eyes flickered with annoyance, not concern. That told me everything. Outside, the night was cold, biting through my shirt as I stepped onto the empty sidewalk. The hum of traffic and city lights felt more honest than the laughter behind me. I stood there under the yellow glow of a street lamp, breathing deep, replaying every moment of our relationship. Every "I love you" that now sounded rehearsed. Every apology that came only after she got what she wanted. The door opened behind me. Claire walked out, arms crossed, still in control. "Are you seriously pouting right now?" It was a joke. Everyone thought it was funny. I stared at her. "Everyone except the person you were supposed to love." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive. No wonder my parents, I cut her off." "Your parents were right about one thing," I said, my voice calm but trembling. "You deserve someone who cares about appearances. And I deserve someone who cares about respect." She blinked, confused. "What does that mean?" I turned toward the street and said quietly, "It means I'm done." And before she could respond, I walked away, leaving her, the dinner, and the future I thought I wanted behind me. When I got home that night, I half expected her to follow me. Maybe to argue, maybe to apologize. Instead, there was silence. Just the sound of my keys hitting the counter and the hum of the old ceiling fan. I sat on the couch in my suit, staring at nothing, replaying the look on her face when I said, "I'm done." It wasn't heartbreak or guilt. It was shock, like no one had ever told her no before. My phone started buzzing around midnight. First Claire, then her mother, then her friends. Each voicemail was a different version of the same story. You embarrassed her. You ruined the night. You overreacted. Not one of them asked how I felt. Not one person said what she did was wrong. By morning, the story had already been twisted. Apparently, I'd walked out because I couldn't handle her family's success. Claire's parents were telling everyone. I got cold feet, that I was insecure about her lifestyle. Friends who'd once cheered us on now texted, "Man, what happened?" with that tone people use when they've already picked a side. The only person who didn't judge me was Tyler. He showed up with coffee and said, "You did what every guy wishes he had the guts to do." I didn't feel brave, though. I felt hollow. I went through the motions that day, called the venue, canceled my tux rental, and emailed the travel agency about the honeymoon trip I'd paid for in full. When the agent asked if I wanted a refund or to transfer the booking, I paused. My thumb hovered over the phone screen as I stared out the window. Maybe I didn't need a refund. Maybe I needed a reset. For the first time in days, I breathed deeply and decided to go. Alone. 2 days later, I stood in my kitchen with a duffel bag and a printed boarding pass. My phone had stopped buzzing. Claire must have realized I wasn't responding. I'd already called the venue and told them to cancel the ceremony. They tried to talk me out of it, said it was a lot of money to waste. But the truth was, the money didn't hurt as much as the disrespect. The honeymoon was already paid for. 5-star resort, ocean view, champagne welcome. I'd worked overtime to afford it. Every extra shift, every late-night call, all for a trip I thought would celebrate love. I stared at the confirmation email for a long time, then quietly packed my bag. When I got to the airport, the woman at the counter smiled politely. "Traveling alone today?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just me." Her smile widened a little, not pitying, just kind. Sometimes those are the best trips. On the flight, I scrolled through social media. The comments under Claire's posts were brutal. People had heard what happened. Someone leaked a video of her speech, her tone, her jokes, the way she looked at me while the room laughed. The internet was ripping her apart. Words like classist and cruel filled the feed. I didn't post anything in response. No explanations, no defense. Just a single photo. My boarding pass and the caption, "Choosing peace." I watched the likes climb into the thousands before I turned my phone off and leaned back in my seat. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about saving a relationship or proving myself to anyone. I was just free. As the plane lifted off the runway, I realized I wasn't running away from anything anymore. I was finally walking towards something. Myself. The moment I stepped off the plane, the warm, salty air hit me. Heavy with ocean breeze and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Calm. The resort was everything I imagined it would be, except now it was quiet. No laughter beside me, no us in the picture. The staff still greeted me as Mr. and Mrs., and I didn't bother to correct them. I just smiled faintly and took the key card. The first few hours were strange. Every corner of the room reminded me of what should have been. The king-sized bed, the champagne bucket, the note that said, "Congratulations on your wedding." I poured one glass anyway, sat on the balcony, and watched the waves. It felt like watching the end of something and the start of something else. I spent the next few days in silence. No phone calls, no emails, just swimming, hiking, and long walks through narrow beach towns where no one knew my name. At first, I felt out of place being alone, but then something shifted. People smiled at me, spoke kindly, not knowing or caring what I did for a living. A local vendor handed me a coconut and said, "You look like a man who just left something heavy behind." I laughed for the first time in weeks. One night at the resort bar, I met a group of travelers. We shared stories about love, mistakes, and lessons learned. One woman, a photographer, said something I'll never forget. Some people shame others because deep down, they're terrified of being ordinary. It hit me hard. Claire didn't humiliate me because she hated my work. She did it because she feared being seen as less perfect. That night, as I watched the tide roll in under a silver moon, I realized I didn't lose anything worth keeping. I just finally saw who she really was. And for the first time since walking away, I didn't feel pain. I felt peace. A few days into the trip, I finally turned my phone back on. I expected silence, maybe a few missed calls, but what I saw made me sit down right where I was. My inbox was flooded, social media blowing up. The story had gone viral. Someone at the rehearsal dinner had recorded Claire's toast, her laughing about my dirty hands and fixing ACs, and posted it online. The clip spread like wildfire. The comments were brutal. This poor guy. She humiliated him for working? He dodged a bullet. Thousands of strangers were defending me, calling her out, dissecting every cruel detail. Claire, on the other hand, had gone radio silent. Her last Instagram post, a smiling selfie from that same night, was now a battlefield of people demanding an apology. I didn't say a word publicly. Didn't post, didn't correct, didn't defend. I just watched. The same world that once seemed to admire her was now seeing what I'd seen that night. The arrogance behind the charm, the entitlement behind the smile. There was a strange satisfaction in it, not out of revenge, but justice. The resort manager even recognized me one morning while I was getting coffee. "You're that guy from the video, aren't you?" he asked gently. I nodded, embarrassed, but he smiled. "Man, good for you. Not many walk away with that kind of dignity." That night, I stood on the balcony watching lightning flicker across the ocean. It was like nature itself was scrubbing the world clean. For months, I'd questioned my worth because one woman made me feel small. Now, millions of people were reminding me that respect isn't earned through wealth or titles. It's earned through character. I didn't need to prove I was enough anymore. The world already saw it, but Claire wasn't done yet. Her silence wouldn't last forever. And when she finally reached out, it was with a tone I'd never heard before. It was late afternoon when her name finally lit up my screen again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. The voice on the other end wasn't the confident, composed woman I once knew. It was shaky, frantic. "Can we please talk?" she said. "You have no idea what this has done to me." I stayed quiet for a few seconds. "Claire, I think I do." She started crying. Not soft, remorseful tears, but panicked sobs. "Everyone hates me. My job's threatening to suspend me because of the video. My parents won't even talk to me. I made a mistake, okay? I was just trying to be funny." "Funny?" I repeated, my tone low. "You called my life a joke in front of everyone we knew," she sniffled. "You humiliated me by walking out. You made me look crazy." I leaned back in the chair of my hotel balcony, staring at the horizon. "I didn't humiliate you, Claire. You did that yourself." Her voice softened, trembling. "I loved you. I just got caught up in how things looked. You know how my parents are. I didn't mean to hurt you." For a moment, I almost felt that old ache, the part of me that used to fix broken things. But this time, I knew better. "You didn't just hurt me," I said quietly. "You exposed yourself. I didn't destroy your reputation. Your actions did." She was silent for a long time before whispering, "So, that's it?" "Yeah," I said. "That's it." Before hanging up, I added softly, "One day, you'll realize respect is worth more than image. I hope you learn that before it's too late." When the call ended, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction, just clarity. She'd spent years chasing perfection. I was done chasing her approval, and for the first time, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. Coming back home was harder than I expected. The silence hit differently. No calls, no laughter, no us. Just an empty apartment littered with wedding plans, unopened gifts, and a tux hanging uselessly in the closet. The first night, I sat on the couch surrounded by decorations that never saw the aisle. For a while, I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. Maybe I should have forgiven her. But then I replayed her laugh at that dinner, the way she looked at me like I was beneath her, and the doubt evaporated. I sold the engagement ring. It didn't feel bitter, just necessary. I called the vendors, canceled everything, and donated the leftover catering deposit to a local shelter. Each step hurt less than the one before. I used part of the refund to buy new tools, then started what I'd been dreaming about for years, my own HVAC business. The first few months were brutal. Long nights, small jobs, and barely any sleep. There were days I questioned if I could keep it going. But word spread. People liked that I was honest, that I showed up on time, that I cared. One day, an older client told me, "Men like you are rare now. Keep doing what you're doing." I smiled all the way home that day. Still, there were moments of loneliness. Those 2 a.m. hours when I'd wonder what she was doing, if she'd moved on. But then I'd look around at the life I was rebuilding, one I didn't have to apologize for, and I'd remember why I walked away. My lowest moment had stripped me bare, but it also rebuilt me stronger. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming someone new, and when I finally saw Claire again, by pure accident, I realized just how much had changed. It happened about a year later. I was finishing up a repair job in a newly built neighborhood when I heard someone call my name. I turned, and there she was. Claire. Her hair shorter, face a little thinner, but that same uneasy smile. She walked up slowly, clutching a designer purse like it was armor. "Hey," she said softly. "You look different," I nodded. "So do you." She glanced at my work van, now wrapped with my business logo, and said, almost in disbelief, "So this is yours?" "Yeah," I said simply. "Started it a few months after. Everything." She hesitated. "I'm happy for you." But her voice cracked on the word happy. I could tell she wasn't. Her eyes flicked between the logo, my uniform, and me. Like she was seeing, maybe for the first time, what real pride looked like. We stood there in silence for a while before she said, "I wanted to reach out before, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." I smiled faintly. "You were right," she nodded, biting her lip. "You deserved better. I know that now." "I did," I said quietly. "But it's okay. You taught me what better really means." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, but not enough to take back what I'd learned. When I got back in my van, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The same man, just steadier, stronger. The kind of man who doesn't need to prove his worth to anyone. These days, I wake up early, make coffee, and head out to fix things. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's honest. My clients respect me. My employees trust me. And every now and then, I catch myself smiling, realizing I'm finally living on my own terms. I may not wear a suit or sit behind a desk, but I build comfort for a living, and that's more than she, or anyone who laughed that night, will ever understand.